We've all heard of George Stephenson, hopefully, an early railway pioneering engineer who, with his son Robert, became two of the most renowned engineers of the pioneering phase of railway development. They introduced the architect Francis Thompson, who had been working in the UK and then in Canada, and brought him back to help design the 26 stations that I mentioned on this line. Thompson used a whole number of different architectural styles for his station buildings, variously Greek, Egyptian, Elizabethan, Tudor. He rang all the changes to create variety in the styles of stations he was building. Think back to prior to 1840. We're talking at a period when there were no railway lines in the Midlands. Here comes another train. And this is where I can mention one of the great opportunities for this station. There were no other railways in the area. Alfreton is 2 miles away, Mansfield is 12 miles away, and this station sought to cater for those towns. So much so that the North Midland Railway Company saw fit to create parcel depots in those towns, a bit like Amazon today. So parcels could be delivered to those depots and brought to this station for onward transportation. 12 miles away. This is some 30 or 40 years before Mansfield had its own railway line going through. Alfreton was a bit sooner, but initially this station catered for those towns. And so far itself from Wingfield village. Why a station here? Well, when planning the railway line, the Stephensons clearly sought to take the line of least resistance through the hills. They chose the Amber Valley, the Derby Valley and river valleys further north to achieve the line of least resistance between Derby and Leeds. Sensible off, you might think, but it also had the added advantage that things like the developing collieries on the slopes, because the Amber Valley is rich in coal, always was, it probably still is. But the Amber Valley was rich in coal, but the coal was being dug slightly further up the slopes on either side. Subsequently, this station became a major point for two collieries very close to here. It became known as the South Wingfield Colliery, but initially it was the Oakerthorpe and the Waterloo collieries, and there were sidings coming off this line, the other side of the station master's house, which catered for those two collieries. And clearly it was advantageous if the collieries were halfway up the hillsides either side to use gravity to bring the goods, the coal, down to the line for onward shipment. And some of the first coal to reach London for feeding houses there from the Midlands came through this very station. But initially it was foreseen as a passenger station. This is in the time when the railways were opening up and making fantastic opportunities, creating fantastic opportunities for people from urban areas to get out into the countryside. Something we take for granted today with our cars and the expansion of the railway, although they're cut back in the 60s. The expansion of the railways allowed people from their very narrow urban existence to get out into the countryside, get fresh air, and begin to enjoy the things that people who lived in the country already took for granted. The other big attraction, of course, was some of, not just the countryside itself, but some of the major historic monuments. Within a mile of here, we've got Wingfield Manor, that enormous ruin, still in private ownership, but even then it was a spectacle that was lauded very much, and people would come here and walk and see it. Other places along the line attracted the same sort of attention, so it was opening up the countryside. But turning to the design of this delightful little building, which is no bigger than some of our houses. Why is it designed like this? The architect had an idea of creating something like a lodge to a country estate, so that when people arrived by the railway, coming through this, they were opening out into the countryside. It was very much considered of as a lodge, a cottage lodge for a country estate. There was no need for anything very much bigger, and never was, apparently. Wondering how much time to spend on history. It was really George's son Robert Stephenson who saw the North Midland Railway through to its completion in 1840. The final project consisted of 72 miles of line, this is from Derby to Leeds, 200 bridges, 7 tunnels, 26 stations, including the stations at Derby and Normanton. That's Normanton towards Leeds, not Normanton and Derby, which were shared with other companies, costing in all £3 million, an immense figure for the 1830s. Nearly 10,000 men were involved, and contractors came from far and wide, including Jacksons of Pimlico in London, who built the stations at Derby and Leeds. Construction of the line was completed in 4 years. Skip on. Right, something about George Stephenson, one of the great railway engineers of our time, known as the father of the railways, very much as Alan Sugar, James Dyson and Elon Musk rolled into one. He saw an anticipated change before it happened. He was born in 1781 to poor and illiterate parents, and himself illiterate until 18. He worked and trained at the collieries, taking a noticeable interest in all things mechanical. He even took on 2 jobs, so he could pay for his own private education through having the second one. He built his first railway engine, known as Blucher, in 1814 for hauling coal, and then was appointed chief engineer to the Stockton and Darlington Railway in 1815, the world's first public railway. George Stephenson innovated, and he invented a minor safety lamp. This is before the Davy lamp, and believe it or not, he called this lamp a George, which was corrupted to a Geordie lamp, from which Geordies today are known, people from the Newcastle area. He also invented something which gardeners will recognise, would you believe, a cucumber straightener, which I believe was a glass tube. Okay, the station. Francis Thompson, one of the most important architects of the first railway age. He worked with Robert Stephenson on many buildings, not just on the Derby line, but in others that the Thompsons were building. He'd gone to work in Canada, and there are several stations in Canada still surviving which show the clear influence of Thompson. There's even one closer to home, which isn't designed by Thompson, but has similarities, very close similarities to those in Canada. If any of you know the Roseley Retail Park, north of Matlock, between Matlock and Bakewell, there's an old building in the middle of all that, which predates all the others, with very wide overhanging eaves. It's one of the retail units now. That was designed by Robertson, one of Paxton's assistants. But there's a very, very close relationship in the design. And even this building, although most are gone now, you will see had wide overhanging eaves, which were very popular with the designers at that particular time. That will all be restored here. I'm going to take you inside now because I think there's an awful lot more to learn about the actual project. So if you wouldn't mind putting on one of these hard hats, they've all been sanitised between the visits, but please find one that fits you. They are adjustable, but do come inside.
Want us to put masks on?